if you're new here, my name is Cliff Weitzman. I'm the CEO of Speechify, and in this series, we introduce you to the different people who make up the Speechify team. Jan, what do you do at Speechify?
Basically, I do everything from working with Cliff on YouTube content, internal content, and also advertisements, to just helping Speechify acquire more users and grow through advertisements, SEO, and just content production in general.
Where are you from originally?
So I was born in Uruguay, South America, and lived there most of my life. But my family is like kind of from all over the place, so I do have roots in different places.
How did you find out about Speechify?
I was wrapping up high school. I had an exam that I needed to read a decently long book for, and I started Googling around text-to-speech content. I didn't actually come across Speechify immediately, but the retargeting, the way that Speechify did advertisements, that immediately I got a video of Cliff in the pool, and I was like, wow, I don't know about the product, but this is like an insanely good ad. So I downloaded the product, I paid for the subscription, and in my mind I was like, well, yeah, I do have some feedback points for this company and organization, so let me send it over and see if this is useful. You responded, put me in contact with somebody at Speechify, and we just kind of went from there 2 years ago.
Jan sent me a 10-page PDF on how to improve our ad targeting. He wrote like a Medium article on how to improve the product stuff with Speechify, and he figured out how to basically build TikTok partnerships for us. And then after that, he kept taking on more and more and more and more and more responsibility. So one example of this was the Speechify API. And so I mentioned to Jan that I was working on this project, and a couple of days later, he just produced a Google Sheet with hundreds of potential customers for the API, and he had already started emailing all of them. Where do you get the confidence to do that?
So this is actually an interesting question. Growing up, I always had this little objective. Whenever somebody asks me like, why are you doing everything that you're trying to do? Is because I want to like, have my 100th birthday be in a stadium with 100,000 people that I positively impacted somehow in my life. But really there's like an underlying message to that, which is when I was young, my mother was diagnosed with cancer and had a 3% survival rate, which basically meant that the likelihood that I was gonna have her for long was very minimal. And I was just like 13, maybe 14 years old at the time, trying to figure out, okay, what can I do with my time, my energy, my life, basically, so I can get myself into a situation that allows me to provide her with the life I want to give her and live the experiences I want with her before she passes away. Thankfully, she's like doing amazingly well now, and that gave me the energy to start saying like, I have no reason to stop until I get to this situation. And so when I was in like London with the Speechify team, not only was I feeling so grateful for the fact that I was like a 16-year-old kid with no college education in Uruguay that just kind of like immediately reached out to Cliff, and now was sitting in London in a house with like insanely intelligent people. So I just kind of went, what else can I do to like continue providing value to this organization and to the people here? Speechify is one of these companies where, because we're in a hypergrowth stage, it basically means that there's projects going on and popping up all the time. So if I were to hear about a project or come up with a project and decide that it's convincing enough for me to want to pursue it, I had almost no barriers to like start doing work immediately. Now, if I needed like considerable amount of resources for it, yes, there were some people that need to convince, but for the vast majority of things I'd be able to like build an MVP for or start like developing documents and campaigns that were sufficient enough for me to say like I'm getting traction on this project.
Can you tell me a little bit about the other people that you work with at Speechify that have inspired you?
I think it's fair to say that if you are at Speechify, that says a lot about you, and it definitely means that there's like a baseline level of anybody I meet within this company is going to be incredible in some way. The first person that I think is like probably one of the most insane people I've met in my life is yourself. Almost everything that I have currently in terms of opportunities and like even skills that I've developed come a lot from you. And it's actually great for you to know this because Cliff is very accessible to people within the organization, which is not common or something that happens often. Then I'd also say Chaitu has been also one of the most influential people for me as well. Not just because I've learned like a ton from him in terms of product engineering and just company thinking in general. For someone who is like as high up and so experienced as he might be, he's also actually been there for me when I actually needed him the most, when I was going through personal situations as well. And that's something that I really value in terms of companies, because you just really want to be surrounded by the right people. And then it's everybody else. So in general, it's just a ton of people across the organization.
You work very closely with Vamsi on the API project. What was that partnership like?
It was amazing because so let's say I get an idea and I want to start developing a project within Speechify. A lot of times it requires engineering efforts or like things that I can't physically do myself because I don't have that kind of knowledge or ability. And having Vamsi there made it that immediately any idea that I had, all I needed to do was convince him enough that this was a good idea so we could actually pursue it and put it to the test, which was perfect. And plus I feel like we just had this kind of relationship where whenever we joined a call with a partner or client, it was very evident like what did I need to do and what did he need to do. And we had skills that weren't overlapping necessarily, but they were actually like very helpful one to another. So I felt like we had a great relationship.
I think this is actually a really good point. So Speechify as an organization, it's very flat, very decentralized, very meritocratic. So every team is organized in a pod where there are the technical people who can accomplish the goals. And if you're in Jan's position, you have to convince the engineers enough or the designers enough or the videographers enough that your idea is the best idea in the room. And if so, they will build it. You have the power in your small pod to make massive amounts of changes. Can you share with us some vignettes about the work ethic that you observe?
A funny story, I guess, that I could probably tell is I'm typically the type of person that works late at night. But this one particular time, I decided that I was going to go to bed early. And I saw that Jack was editing a video. Because I'd gone to sleep so early, I'd wake up at 7 in the morning, get up, ready to go on a walk. And I see that Jack is sitting on this same spot editing a video. And I told him like, oh, wow, you woke up early this morning. And then he looked at me and I realized he did not wake up early that morning. He had just continued plowing through the videos and working all night. And it wasn't because he had a deadline. It wasn't because he was forced. It wasn't because he had pressure. It was just because the environment itself was conductive of getting the best out of everybody. And in that specific moment, he just decided what he needed to do or wanted to do was getting those videos done.
What about the work ethic you saw from Vamsi or Chaito? Any stories that you have?
Well, Vamsi, anybody that knows him, he's a machine. He basically gets through anything you need immediately in like such a exceptional way where you basically brainstorm about a problem for hours and you ask him and like he just gives you in a relaxed manner the best possible answer you would have never thought of, which is insane. And then like everybody that comes along the house, you have something to learn from. Sometimes it's about work ethic, sometimes it's about like a specific field of their work, and sometimes it's just about life itself. Like, you know, we're all different ages and have different experiences.
Can you tell me a little bit about the culture of Speechify? What is it like?
It's an extremely supportive place where you can learn and develop basically in an unlimited fashion, as fast as you want. If you're somebody that goes a bit slower and like you want to feel comfortable every step of the way, you can do that. I'm just the kind of guy that like has little patience and is very obsessive, so I try to move faster. But really it's a place where everybody asks questions. You're gonna be able to move at your own pace. You can get support from people, both work-wise and also personally. And most importantly, I think it's a place where it's not like we have it all figured out. Every single thing we do is kind of like a test, and we're trying to see, okay, how many people does this actually impact, and what's like the true needle we've moved in the world? Not just like a revenue figure or whatever the case may be. It's like how much impact does this actually produce in terms of value for the world?
And if someone's watching this video at home and they want to be in your seat, they want to join Speechify, what's the number one piece of advice or pieces of advice you give them?
It doesn't matter where you're from or who you are, the education you have or the experience you have. Just try to demonstrate that there's something that you know or are willing to do that's going to produce value for the company or the people within them itself. And then you are the perfect person for you to do it. And this is hard because at the time I actually didn't believe I was the perfect person to help this organization. I just needed to convince myself that if there was any way I was going to get what I wanted, it was by 1, not giving up, 2, actually putting in the effort, which is everybody wants something fast and easy. You actually have to put in the work. And 3, most importantly, just think, if I'm doing this work, don't think about completing it. It's like, why am I doing it? Ask that question. What is the value it's producing for the company?
What is a story that you have about an experience you've had with me where you were like surprised or just was funny to you?
So a lot of people have this idea of founders, especially like CEOs, as like these big office guys that are like very serious all the time. And when I think of Cliff, like the first thing that comes to mind is being in a London apartment after we had gone to like the theater and just sitting around the table, singing songs, having a blast, talking about like life, and just more than anything, having like a personal conversation. Like being able to like, you know, do this with a CEO and founder who's like a suit kind of guy is not what you're expecting to get. I don't necessarily think this is a story that's funny or something that's different, but something I want to highlight about you is that you're willing to bet on people that most other people would never bet, and in a way that's also like completely different. So what I mean by that is like when I reached out to Cliff, he was willing to give you an opportunity even though he had very little incentives to put risk on the line for me. And even then, after I was already starting to work with the company, everything I needed from transportation to support to anything in the world, he basically like supported me with. He's always there supporting you. So even though it's not a funny story, I think it's even more remarkable.
And I'll double down on that. The most important thing that you do as a founder, as a CEO, is you bring amazing people to work on your organization with you. And so I have a really strong belief that as long as you have a really exceptional work ethic, if you can figure out how to be very technical, and if you think strategically and you demonstrate over and over and over an ability to deliver results, I don't care what your background is. I'd love to work with you. What are you most excited for the future of Speechify in the next year or so?
One, it's product-wise. So Speechify is something I use every single day, but something I use a lot more than Speechify is listening to audiobooks in general. So we're now working on an audiobooks project at Speechify that has me like completely mind blown. The reason for that is if there's like anything that really changed my life beyond YouTube, because it was a significant part in how I learned English, but most importantly, it was just audiobooks and being able to listen to all this information when I honestly was never a great reader. And the ability to now do so with Speechify in a way that is faster, because I can actually change to a pace that I am more comfortable with better voices, and most importantly, like a lot more books accessible to me within like a much better price, is very exciting to me. And then in terms of the company itself, I'd say it's just the fact that, you know, when I first joined the company, we were 18 people probably, and like the growth team was like 2.5 or so. And now like we're over 100 and we're just continuing to grow, which for me means there's so many more people that are exceptional, that think like me, and that are in a similar situation to me that I can meet and actually get to like develop a relationship with, and it can be called work. That's an amazing thing. So every time like we hire someone and I get to meet them, like that's amazing. So yes, I'm just very excited for the company to, one, have new products that are actually going to be a lot more valuable for myself personally and probably to a lot of people, and two, to continue meeting a lot of very smart and intelligent people within the organization.